How do you talk about the threat to democracy, which is real, when a president says things like he says? Do you just not say anything because it may incite somebody? Look, I have not engaged in that rhetoric. Now, my opponent is engaged in that rhetoric. He talks about there'll be a bloodbath if he loses, talking about how he's going to forgive all the, actually, I guess, suspend the sentences of all those who were arrested and sentenced to go to jail because of what happened in the Capitol. I'm not out there making fun of, like, remember the picture of Donald Trump when Nancy Pelosi's husband was hit with a hammer, joking about it?
Let's be real and totally honest. Fox News have a huge problem. They have a dilemma. In exactly the same way that the former president of the United States of America, one Donald J. Trump, has a problem. Unity, respectful, kindness, decency, they are not things that they naturally find, a home within their own setup. They just do not know how to present themselves like that, how to be respectful, because their whole nature is to be, a kind of angst.
Then he provoked the Russians to invade Ukraine with talk of NATO expansion. Afterward, he rejected every opportunity for peace in Ukraine, including a deal to end the war just 2 months after it broke out.
Kind of nasty. To be really vile at every single opportunity. Obviously to manufacture lies, and I think there's a lady called Jessica Tarlov who's on the 5 at Fox. I have no idea how she just has the patience to sit there and argue back, construct really adult arguments back as well. I think I just walk out.
But, Jen Psaki was demanding, this is after the attempted assassination, that Republicans change their rhetoric, their tone, and she said she's incredibly scared. Rachel Maddow always talked about being taken off the air and being taken off the air and being put in a camp. That's the kind of language that I'm really surprised that Jen Psaki is sticking to.
I think that everyone is concerned about what's to come next. Republicans obviously around the convention who are worried that something else may happen, something else may happen, right? That if it's that shooter could get that close to him, that we could get something else, and it could happen to anyone, and it could happen to anyone of any political stripe. I think that's where Jen Psaki's concern is coming from. I happen to think that you don't need to change the program. You can watch your words, whatever you're going to say, and there are going to be a lot of fiery speakers. Some of them are coming during the day. Some of them are coming during the day. Are going to be big. I'm not in the business of telling Republicans what they can do with their convention, what they can do with their convention. We'll lead by example of what we think our convention should look like. And the themes of the convention are the basis for the campaign.
But Jen was demanding that the Republicans.
I don't agree with that. I don't agree with that. I think sensible and responsible about the moment. And it's a huge moment to do that. It's a huge moment to do that. But I wanted clarity from President Biden on the Bullseye comment interview with interest. Nobody who's being an honest broker can possibly believe the Democratic rhetoric is the problem here. So if the issue is that we're saying he's like Hitler and he's a threat to democracy, and by the way, J.D. Vance is also said that J.D. Vance has also said that I guess he's redeemed now. But Donald Trump sent a fundraising email just last week that said Joe Biden is a threat to democracy. And only one of these candidates has inspired to leading Democrats across the country, who has inspired mass shooters, who has inspired mass firing up the base. Talk about firing up the base. That's since 2016. Remember when he said the Second Amendment people could take care of it? People could take care of it. Abolishing the Second Amendment and she'll get to appoint judges. And she'll get to appoint judges. Remember that Congressman from Montana who body slammed a reporter, and he said he's my type. He said he's my type. Truthed or whatever it was, a video of Joe Biden just hogtied.
Just hilarious. That was hilarious. So tiny. We're talking about an attempted assassination that left a man dead. A shooter groomed and incentivized a demonization. You can call people all you want. But you have to ask yourself, why would you? You have a right to say whatever you want. You have a right to say whatever you want. You can say Hitler, but the question is, but the question is, you cannot pretend that you did not know where it would lead. Trump laughs about a picture of a hogtied Joe Biden on the back of a pickup truck on the back of a pickup truck. That is a meme. That is a meme.
And people you could take care of it about Hillary Clinton. What is that? That was his opponent. What is that? That was his opponent. That was his political opponent.
The day before the attempted assassination of Donald Trump, Joe Biden said he's even more dangerous than I've said before. He's unhinged, he's snapped, and I guess he really didn't watch the debate when he was asked the debate. He's a threat to this nation. He'll win over my dead body.
But you know what? I'm sure when he called, I'm sure when he called, he said no hard feelings. Trump, he said no hard feelings.
In politics, I say politics. I say you're evil.
You have to understand. No, but you have to understand. It's scary to think that Joe Biden would lie like that, but he lie like that, but he has. Scary that he would believe this stuff. The real challenge for the party is what do you do next? You can't do the Trump is Hitler narrative because you'll be thoroughly reviled by the public. You're going to need more than demonization, but you got nothing else planned. So you're going to pivot to abortion. So you're going to pivot to abortion. Good luck with that. When it comes to Trump is Hitler, you the dog and you realize you can't drive. And you realize you can't drive. And I think you can sit here and you can say at Trump that you want. Everybody understands. Everybody understands. Everybody understands. Everybody understands. Makes jokes. He makes jokes. Your side wasn't making jokes. When you call somebody Hitler, and we say no, we're not. And we say no, we're not.
The guy who sent pipe bombs understood the jokes.
I don't know who that is. I don't know who that is. There were pipe bombs.
I mean, come on.
Bernie Sanders came out right away. Bernie Sanders came out right away and said,
I just think you should prepare for a beautiful dictatorship, Jessica. It's going to be a 4-year dictatorship. It's going to be a 4-year dictatorship. And we're going to get from day one.
Like Lincoln, in the midst of our pain and division, Donald Trump is calling us to be touched by the better angels of our nature.
And even at the RNC, this new level of unity, it was clearly something that was going to last for about, as long as they can spell the word UNITY. In Charlie Kirk, who runs Turning Pointless and does a podcast or something like that, well, at least he was honest. He accepted how vile and how nasty and how full of shit he actually is, and literally throws as much garbage in the direction, violent garbage as well.
Donald Trump refuses to accept this fake, pathetic, mutilated version of the American dream. When he was president, young people were richer than ever before, and he will do it again.
And hold on a moment, this guy who's the valet person, Mike Pence should have a word, teach him a thing or two, he wasn't exactly, how should we say, respectful of a position you would... if someone's going to be vice president of a country, you'd expect them to be a little bit more, damn right, imbecile, really. There's a polite word beginning with I. You want a word beginning with A?
JD is kissing my ass. He wants my support. JD is kissing my ass. JD is kissing my ass. JD is kissing my ass.
JD is kissing my ass. He wants my support.
This is not a...
am I meant to be being serious? Sorry about that. The news is J.D. Vance, Mr. Eyeliner himself, is going to be Trump's number 2 valet person. J.D. Vance, who has a lot of things to say. And at one stage, they weren't particularly complimentary about former guy.
You know, I just tried to enjoy the ride. What an honor to be considered. If it had been Senator Rubio, obviously Marco's a good guy, he's a good friend. So I try to just have a good attitude about it. You know, my family's very excited, obviously asking a lot of questions. I will say, Sean, I hope I'm not betraying too many confidences here, but when the president called me today to actually formally offer me to become, you know, the vice presidential nominee, which just sounds crazy. My son, my 7-year-old son, was sort of making noise in the background. You know, I'm getting so embarrassed. It's like, oh my God, Donald Trump's asking me to be his vice president.
So the phone rings, he calls you, and you're like, okay, this is the call, or maybe not the call.
Or maybe it's a bad call, right? It's the call. Who knows whether it's good or bad? But then he actually has me put my 7-year-old son on the phone. You think about this. Everything that's happened, the guy just got shot at a couple of days ago, and he takes the time to talk to my 7-year-old. It's a moment I'll never forget.
Governor I can't, you know, I've been flicking through. The Trumpy Trumps, all of those type of cable news stations are going crazy. Apparently, JD Vance is a saviour. Okay.
And I want to thank especially Kevin Roberts and all of the Heritage Foundation for 50 years of incredible work on conservative policy. You know, the old famous...
This is an evolution, and I know you've been asked about this before, about past comments that you've made about Donald Trump. You've said, I'm a never Trump guy, never liked him, terrible candidate, idiot if you voted for him, might be America's Hitler, might be a cynical a-hole, cultural heroine, noxious and reprehensible. Those are things that...
If you go back to what I thought in 2016, another thing that was going on, Sean, is I bought into the media's lies and distortions. I bought into this idea that somehow he was going to be so different, a terrible threat to democracy. It was a joke. Joe Biden is the one who's trying to throw his political opposition in jail. Joe Biden is the one who's trying to undermine American law and order. President Trump did a really good job. And I actually think it's a good thing when you see somebody, you were wrong about him, you ought to admit the mistake and admit that you were wrong.
Okay. I'm going to say something to JD Vance. Okay.
I got a lot.
I'll go first. There is a longer part of this because she goes back and forth with him on it. So she gets him to exposes him on the hypocrisy of the January 6th versus the college campus stuff, right? But then he goes on to say, because she talks about the vice president and the fact that, you know, Pence isn't supporting him, and is he comfortable with what happened on January 6th, particularly with the threats to Mike Pence. And JD Vance tried to act like it wasn't a big deal. Oh, that's absurd. We don't really know if that happened. There really wasn't that much violence. And try to make it seem as though what we saw didn't happen. Let me tell you something, JD Vance. You take that smug, cavalier attitude and stand in front of the hundreds of police officers who were injured that day and the officers who lost their careers because of the injuries that day, protecting your ass from those violent mob insurrectionists that you're trying to call patriots and raising money for, and have no problem with Donald Trump blanket pardoning. Tell that to the Secret Service agents.
You say that
Tell that to the Secret Service agents who left messages with their families because they thought they were going to die that day, protecting the Capitol building that you ran from. So JD Vance and all these other people who are trying to act like January 6th didn't happen and that it wasn't a violent insurrection, they are incorrigible, hypocritical bastards that deserve to be nowhere near the White House. So
shut up, bitch. Baby, stop making me so mad. How did you get so fat? You want me to do it again? You tell anybody and you're dead. I'm gonna teach you a lesson.
These are the threats millions of women trapped in abusive marriages hear every day. Women are beaten, injured, and too many are killed by their husbands, who use violence to control them. Now, JD Vance says women in abusive marriages should not divorce their abusers.
My grandparents had an incredibly chaotic marriage in a lot of ways, but they never got divorced.
That they should just endure the violence. It's not that JD Vance doesn't understand what happens to American women in violent relationships.
These marriages were fundamentally, you know, they were maybe even violent, but certainly they were unhappy.
It's that he just doesn't give a damn.
I didn't start a fake nonprofit pretending like I was going to help people with addiction like JD Vance did. Literally started a nonprofit and didn't spend one nickel on anybody. In fact, he brought in somebody from Purdue Pharma to be the spokesperson for the nonprofit. 1 million people died, JD. 1 million people died, and you started a nonprofit to try to take advantage of people in Ohio, and you know what? All you did with it was launch your political career.
So don't try to spin this, because you don't want to talk about the fact that you're with the extremists, and that belief, which is grounded, going back decades, led to some crazy dude getting a gun and going to a black grocery store.
It's disgusting, and I've never endorsed it. We have an invasion in this country because very powerful people get richer and more powerful because of it. It's not bad policy, it's evil, and we need to call it that.
We are running for the United States Senate. This is the highest office you could get in this country except for president. And he's running around backing these extremists, the most extreme people in the country, a guy who denied Sandy Hook. He's like, he's credible.
Thank you,
I mean, you don't have to, it's maddening.
This is a complete fabrication.
You know, Nicole, in our organization, it's run by a bunch of women, and every one of us was horrified, but everyone had a story of someone they knew or some friend they had who was trapped or had been trapped in some sort of violent or abusive relationship. And hearing J.D. Vance say those things out loud, unself-consciously, it really betrays a giant moral vacuum in this guy who does not understand that just saying, for the good of the institution of marriage, women should be beaten or abused or even killed in these relationships. It's shocking, it's horrifying, but it tells you all about why J.D. Vance, is trailing in Ohio against Tim Ryan, and it shows you he does not care about a very fundamental question. So we're asking Republican women and Democratic women and independent women in Ohio, think hard about this guy and understand what his values are before you consider casting a vote for him. Nicole, it really has come down to the fact that a lot of these companies, they all said they weren't going to back any of the 1-6 insurrectionists, and yet within a few weeks they had drifted back into the comfortable embrace of Kevin McCarthy and Mitch McConnell. And those are other people that should be asked this question too. People should be asking Mitch McConnell, are you really serious about supporting this man? Do you really believe that other candidates across the country who should share this position? It's outrageous. And of course, there's Peter Thiel, who's one of Vance's largest super PAC supporters, who should also be asked this question. It is a sign again that the pursuit and retention of power has become vastly more important on that side.
The Lincoln Project salutes our fellow Never Trump activist, J.D. Vance. He led the way in opposing Trump in 2016, even calling Trump our Hitler.
J.D. Vance speculated that Trump might be America's Hitler.
Trump is the fruit of the party's collective neglect. I go back and forth between thinking Trump is a cynical a-hole like Nixon, or that he's America's Hitler.
Are you a racist?
JD joined John Kasich as the only major Republicans in Ohio to vote against Donald Trump in 2016, and he boldly told the truth about Trump voters.
We are, whether we like it or not, the party of lower income, lower education white people.
Trump is cultural heroin.
Fellow Christians, everyone is watching us when we apologize for this man.
JD Vance is a multimillionaire big tech banker with a degree from Yale, our kind of candidate.
Let me ask you about January 6th. You've been mentioned as a possible vice president for Donald Trump. Had you been vice president on January 6th, would you have certified the election results?
Oh, George, this is such a ridiculous question, in part because the law has changed here. We, of course, had
I didn't ask you about going forward. I asked you what you would have done. I asked you what you would have done.
George, here's what I think. Here's what I think happened in 2020, and I know you guys are obsessed with talking about this. I have to make a point here. You constantly say to people like me, "Why do you talk about January the 6th? Why do you talk about the election of 2020?" And then you ask about us multiple times during a 6-minute interview. But look, you asked the question, and I'll answer it. Do I think there were problems in 2020? Yes, I do.
I'm going to vote third party because I can't stomach Trump. I think that he's noxious and is leading the white working class to a very dark place.